Hello and welcome everyone to our third of four events in the Photography is series. For these events, Foam Photography Museum Amsterdam has joined forces with the Amsterdam-based platform and laboratory focused on internet and digital culture, to explore how the internet has reshaped photography. My name is Winke Wiegersma. I work at Foam as a curator for our digital platform, Foam Explore.
And my name is Lillian Stolk. I'm director of the and we're really happy to welcome you on our live stream tonight. You'll be seeing me and Winke in the stream, but in addition to our guests, but we couldn't do this event without some people who are hiding out behind the scenes. Our technician Marco, who is running the live stream, and our chat moderator Margarita, who will be sharing links throughout the program and bringing all of your questions to us. You could give them a virtual applause for those who haven't been to our live stream before. We have a few little tips to share. You can chat in the chat on the right side of the screen. You can respond to the speakers or just share your emotions with the emotes tab at the bottom. You can watch the live stream with different video resolutions, a low res option, which shows a screenshot every 15 seconds in audio only mode, and in text only mode, you only see the words that we say. Which is quite maybe a good experiment for tonight's text event. You can turn on captions by pressing the three dots at the bottom of the screen. And you might have noticed that as you watch, all the data that is being sent and received is being calculated in the top right as a way to make you think a little bit more about the energy resources of digital platforms.
Also, last event, our second event, some of you didn't receive the link due to a technical hiccup. So we wanted to express our apologies for that. We hope that whoever is joining now was able to watch back in their own time. With all those practical details out of the way, let's get back to tonight's event. This series departs from the question, what even is photography nowadays? In a rapidly changing context, it seems quite futile to want to pin the photographic medium down to one definition. Instead, with photography is ... we collectively want to explore the different possible endings to this sentence, which in fact, at the end, we will do together, in order to better understand the multitude of manifestations of this medium and to speculate what might come next in a myriad of possible futures. In the coming hour, we have an exciting selection of speakers lined up, but before we dive into the conversations, we'll quickly bring you up to speed on some of the ideas and inspiration behind. Tonight, as you know, we'll explore the statement, photography is text. And for preparing this, we were wondering, to what extent is the photographic medium defined and constructed by text? What role does text play in our understanding of photography? And what role does the internet play in this?
Yeah, the digital landscape has blurred the lines between photography and text, while social media platforms like Instagram encourage users to pair images with captions, hashtags, and comments. The overwhelming volume of information and the ease of scrolling have elevated the image to the role of primary attention grabber, and text often plays just a supporting role. In this new paradigm, the image itself becomes the message, and in a sense, the new text. And at the same time, we started typing with images. With emoji, visual elements are literally added to our scripts, while memes blend text, images, sounds, and videos, offering richer and more nuanced forms of expression. What does this shift in media consumption do to our understanding of the world? Philosopher Willem Vlasser wrote about this already back in the 1980s, and he argued that the dominance of writing and print culture have fostered a more linear, historical, and causal worldview. He writes, when images supplant text, we experience, perceive, and value the world and ourselves differently, no longer in a one-dimensional, linear, process-oriented, historical way, but rather in a two-dimensional way, as surface, context, scene.
Looking back again for a second, we observed that the internet as a system was originally created as a text-only infrastructure. The logic and structures behind the internet largely depend on textual formats. The way images are used and distributed and contextualized on the internet strongly relates to text, from typing in search queries to find an image online, or inadvertently helping train machine learning algorithms by selecting all the images with traffic lights, the sort of CAPTCHA things that are added to a lot of websites. Text functions as the internet's middleman. This left us with the recent boom in text-to-image generation. In 2015, the first of those models, called a line draw, was introduced by researchers of the University of Toronto. And digital theorist Lev Manovich describes this history as follows. In 2015, neural networks could already label images, convert them to descriptions of their content. Simultaneously, a model called Draw was created that could generate coherent images using a series of numbers. These two ideas were then combined and showed that text descriptions can be converted by a deep network into images. Fast forward 9 years, and we're amidst a true revolution in terms of artificial image generation. Machine learning algorithms are trained on large datasets of text labeled photographs, and with the recent rise of AI image generation tools, a photorealistic image can be created online through a simple textual prompt. As Fred Richin from ICP, who joined us in the first event, already mentioned, we've truly entered sort of the post-truth era when it comes to online visual imagery. The relationship between image and text thus becomes even more pressured in a way, and the image and its meaning more malleable. On the one hand, we observe that text acts in a sort of flattening manner, reducing images to its superficial, sometimes unnuanced or even biased racist labels. In 2009, Richin actually published this book called After Photography, and in this he remarks, by assigning keywords, the ambiguity of the photograph is often arbitrarily concretized, the photograph's multiple meanings denied, reifying the challenging mysteriousness of existence that the photograph can sometimes evoke. The way our images are codified, labeled, and indexed has profound influence on what we perceive, what is accessible to us through the internet, and presented to us through search engines or image generators. On the other hand, we also experience how text expands the image online, changing its meaning with every different pairing in a very fast way. Something that is most obvious in memes, but also in journalism or news media. What do these fast-paced developments in image-making techniques, when text literally becomes image or even vice versa, mean to the photographic landscape? With our lineup of speakers tonight, we will dive into the workings behind computer vision, text prompting, meme making, to name just a few. So we're excited to take you along.
Yeah, we have 3 speakers tonight, each giving a 10-minute presentation. Feel free to share your thoughts or questions for the speakers via the chat. We have a very quick Q&A after each presentation and a longer moment to discuss at the end of the event. Then it's now time to welcome the first speaker to the screen. It's Simone Niquille. Winke mentioned in the introduction that in order for a computer to understand an image, they have to be labeled by text, and this is a process Simone is interested in. Simone is a designer and researcher who produces films and writing that investigates computation as a new optics. Her work is concerned with vision technologies and the image they make and the worlds that they create, from computer vision, 3D animation, computational photography to synthetic training datasets. Hi, Simone. Welcome. When you're ready, feel free to start your presentation.
Absolutely. Is it all working? Do you see the slide?
I think.
Perfect. Well, thank you for having me. I think there's also sort of a such a nice intersection, right, between internet culture and photography and what photography has been and is becoming. Today, I'd like to talk about a film work called Sorting Song, which is also in the exhibition Poetics of Prompting, currently at MU in Eindhoven, which is co-curated with the HUM. Sorting Song is part of a trilogy of movies that started around 2019. They all, to some they have their different chapters in a narrative around what it means to have computer vision as a roommate. So to sort of cohabitate with robots, automated devices that use computer vision to navigate a home, and all of the challenges and consequences that come with that. And I'll try to unpack some of them that are embedded in Sorting Song with a little bit of an introduction of why and what does it even mean to have computer vision in your home. So around 2015, this is an article that appeared in The Guardian, and I was really quite intrigued by it, specifically the very sort of sensational headline of South Korean woman's hair eaten by a robot vacuum cleaner as she slept. It's sort of assigning an agency to the robot vacuum cleaner right away, rather than looking at what the image is really telling. And I think the narrative that the image was telling is much more one of assumptions that are perhaps part of the engineering process of these robot vacuum cleaners. One sort of being about what constitutes a bed, right? This sort of object, furniture object that we use to sleep on. Perhaps sometimes that's like a risen platform, but sometimes that can also be a futon or something else. Either that's a cultural decision, rituals, etc. There's many, many things involved in what constitutes a home and what constitutes the furniture that you place in it. Something that feels so mundane, why even talk about it? But I think as soon as we introduce devices in it that run on certain standards, some of the shortcomings of these standards are exposed. So it sort of led me on a path of wondering how are these devices navigating the home, given not too many of these devices are either in any of your homes or already on the market. I mean, we're looking at something like, again, the vacuum cleaner, I think, is one of the most sort of well-known ones. There's like a doorbell by Ring, acquired by Amazon, the surveillance cameras, and then this very silly robot called Amazon Astro that was also developed by Amazon and it was on the market very briefly. Boston Dynamics Spot Mini is something I'll use, which was my own entry as well. So there was a video showing this robot by this company called Boston Dynamics. And this was around 2016, and it was introducing, so there's a bigger robot dog, which is the one in green, and then the smaller one with this sort of silly eye painted on it, that was Spot Mini. And the company Boston Dynamics was showcasing the abilities of this robot with this video. And I was really intrigued by the scenography that they were using to show the abilities of this dog. So on the left, you see sort of a house, more or less, right? And as the robot, as the video goes along, the robot enters this quote unquote house and does all kinds of stuff in it. And I think one of the important scenes is this one where the robot's seen putting a glass into the dishwasher And then next thing, right, there was this root beer can on the plates. It takes it and puts it in the trash. And I thought that was really curious, right? Like, how would you, into an automated system, but what kind of information and data is needed, and how is it trained to make such a distinction between trash and dirt? Something that is really individual and subjective, and to some extent might also change over time, is difficult for a human being how to automate such a question. So I started simply making an inventory of all of the stuff that I saw that was in this house, and then sort of rebuilt it in Blender. And all of that became this article, and it led me down the path that I'm going to briefly take you on today. One thing I encountered is that, my article was based on assumptions, as in it was based on a reconstruction of the house that I saw in the video, but there was no way I was going to have access to the actual training data that was embedded in the computer vision systems of this dog, simply because Boston Dynamics is a private company. There's no way they're going to open source this data, at least not in 2016. So I switched a lot of my work to the vacuum cleaners, and this is a camera module that would be on a Roomba. And this is some leaked footage that Roomba started recording. So this wasn't always the case, right? The way that a vacuum cleaner navigates has really changed over time, from sort of infrared sensors to computer vision, with this constant question of where do you find enough data on people's homes, places that are supposed to be private, closed off to a public, to train a computer vision system. And what we see here already is a labeling process that would then take place in processing these images that the camera records, where it's trying to understand what information is in the image, right? Is this a kitchen cabinet? Is this a counter? Is this a shelf? To actually get some quote unquote value out of these images and later use them to train a computer vision system. And one thing I find very important is that data, of course, influences the model that computer vision is going to generate. So when we look at this image, which is the cow shark, training two different computer vision models, one called ResNet 101, and running this image through it, it sees the shape, right? So it sees types of fish, whereas BACnet sees the textures. So immediately it's clear that the type of data that's fed a computer vision system in its training phase is going to influence the way that the model, quote unquote, sees. So the type of information is going to make it or produce a different kind of perception of the world. So for me, this sort of comes to a realization that computation is the new optics, meaning that there's processes taking place, right? There isn't a moment of capture in optics, and these processes really define on what's being seen, what's being represented, and what's existing as visual material in the world, and how that is processed. On the other hand, there's this sort of idea that machine learning is a clean mathematical apparatus that gives a status quo the aura of logical inevitability. The numbers don't lie. And again, I guess the numbers often don't lie, but the question again is what training data was fed into the system, and at the same time also what questions are asked of it. So thinking back to the cow shark, right? At what point is it a cow? At what point is it a shark? And so for the domestic space, a lot of this meant synthetic data. And what I mean with that is because there was a lack of access to photographic, to image data of people's homes, researchers would go to 3D data, so objects and floor plans, to create spaces that would simulate a house. They would look a little bit like this. Virtual cameras would move through these spaces. The frames produced from these videos would then become the training data sets. And one of these, which is supported by Dyson, another vacuum cleaner company, is called CNET RGBD. And this one, because it's developed in an academic setting, is available online. And I was curious about the breakdown of the data, right? So there's categories of rooms, bedrooms, office scenes, kitchens, living rooms, bathrooms. This is sort of an ideal home, right? This is the breakdown of what a home is. It contains these kinds of sceneries. And then there's also a breakdown into categories. And here it already gets super interesting, where suddenly you have categories like gun, sword, and toy, where my question would be, like, at what point is a gun a weapon? And at what point is it a toy? And I mean, I think similar sort of value systems we see embedded in the recent changes of Elon Musk of the gun emoji, right, which has started off as a gun on most platforms, sort of shifted into this Nerf or water pistol, and Platform X has shifted it back to an actual pistol in 2024. And so a quick move back to CNET RGPD. There's a category called chair as well, which is the largest, containing all kinds of objects that are for quote unquote sitting. And to me, something becomes really clear here, right? It isn't so obvious what these objects are supposed to be. All of these 4 objects are part of the training data set, and what you see underneath it are the labels that are assigned to them. And right, similarly to Snoopy having to choose if his house is a house, a bed, or a plane, the question is, what's the context of these objects, right? They don't exist in a vacuum, so what's their use perhaps defines what they are. Linguistics has tried to address some of these questions, sort of saying that there's fuzzy boundaries, right? Like an object doesn't end here, and then like a name doesn't apply anymore. Names are signifiers, but at the same time, where does the cup end and the vase begin is a sort of a famous question that linguist William Labov asked. And he was conducting an experiment, asking people, like giving them different kinds of ceramic objects and asking them, hey, now that you're holding this container, if I put soup in it, is it now a cup or is it a vase? If I put tea in it, what's going to change in terms of context and how you name this object? And with all of that data, he's created this sort of calculation, sort of saying, hey, this sort of, touching point here of the cup and the bowl, this is exactly where you can calculate if one object is one or the other. To me, thinking back to the numbers don't lie, I think this is entirely true. His calculation works based on the data set that he's created himself, taking it out into quote unquote the wild, right? This might look really different again, where anyone can do with a container what they want. And his calculation isn't going to hold up. So on the one hand, I think this is a little bit also where computer vision hits its boundaries, right? Like it works in a setting it's been constructed for. Specificity is sort of key. As soon as it becomes universal or general, things become a little bit more complicated, things become biased, and perhaps also stop working and start eating hair. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for your presentation. Super interesting. Do you have a robot vacuum cleaner of one of the other objects in your house?
No, I'd be way too paranoid to to have one of them. So no, I don't.
Yeah, I think it's interesting. Like I was also thinking a bit more about emoji and for instance, the dancer emoji and how different platforms were representing it. And I'm very big fan of how Google used to present the dancer emoji. It was a bit of a Barbapapa-like blob figure with a rose in its mouth and doing a dance move, but it was not a specific dance. While Apple designed it as a dancing woman in a wet dress with white skin and brown hair. And because of these specific details added, people started asking for a woman with different skin tones and with other hair colors and a man dancer and a gender neutral dancer. So as soon as you add more details to the labels, you also exclude things. I think your presentation was really showing that, but it's of course difficult when you are making a tool like a vacuum cleaner. How do you think about like what could there be more like creative solution that maybe kind of celebrates the openness of labels, but maybe resulting in a more or less functional working vacuum cleaner?
Yeah, I mean, one way companies are trying to move around that is that you sort of are like, once you get the Roomba being sort of one of the leading companies creating these vacuum cleaners, there's now an app, and if the vacuum cleaner sort of goes through your house and it doesn't recognize something, you can label it yourself. But I think it's more a little bit of it's a symptom of the problem, as in it's also making you part of the labor of bettering the data set. So yes, of course, in the end, your gadget is going to function better. But at the end of the day, I think seeing also where it comes from, like a couple of years ago, Roomba had this sort of problem that people would call a poopostrophe, because like the vacuum cleaner could never recognize dog or cat poop, etc., and would like smear it all over a home, right? Like doing the opposite of cleaning. And I think last year they had this video where they sort of made fun of themselves, sort of saying, hey, we've spent hours of our lunch break using clay to make basically a poop data set. So now our vacuum cleaners are like totally improved and they recognize everything. So yes, it is this sort of constant idea of improvement. At the same time, not being able to recognize such an object is difficult for technology, not so much for human beings oftentimes. So it's also a question do we even need that tech, perhaps, right? I don't think so much about how to make the tech itself better, but more like who asked for this, as in there's a whole history of automating the home, what that does to housework, what that does to standards of hygiene that have started way before robots entered the scene, right? This was already a discussion around the time where a dishwasher was introduced, or a person called Lillian Gilbreth redesigned the kitchen to be more efficient. So I think it's a question that's sort of deeply ingrained in many more social contexts, architectural design, rather than a technical solution.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you so much.
Yes, thank you.
If you have a question, like the viewers of the stream, and you have a question for Simone, feel free to leave it in the chat, because Simone will be back in the stream a bit later when we have a conversation with all the speakers. We're gonna do a little switch in the program, other than we planned, because we're still waiting for one of the speakers to come to the stream. So for the next speaker, I want to invite Idil Galip to the stream.
Hello.
Hey. Your talk will be more about communication and text and images. Our communication also becoming more visually, images becoming text. I'm going to introduce you a bit more, because Idil is a lecturer in new media and digital culture at the University of Amsterdam. And she studies internet memes and runs the Meme Studies Research Group, an international and interdisciplinary research network for schoolers who study memes. Idil, you will join us for a talk about images and photos as a form of communication, focusing on the trend where AI-generated images combined with mimetic caption turn into immersive experiences.
Yes, exactly. Thank you, Lillian.
Yeah, thank you. I see in the backstage area that your presentation is ready to start. So feel free to take this the floor or the stream.
Okay, thank you. Thanks, Lillian. And thanks, Simone. That was really interesting. I'm afraid compared to Simone's amazing presentation, mine's going to be maybe a little bit more academic or maybe a little bit more kind of preachy. We'll see. Yeah, so like Lillian said, I'm a teacher. I also write a lot about internet memes and digital culture. Obviously, when I learned I had to fit some sort of like story about memes in 10 minutes, I was thinking, how do I approach this? Where do I start? And I just decided to start from the most basics of memes, the way that we know them so well, which is this kind of combination of text, image, and feeling. And I want to start with kind of doing a historical maybe look and foray into the whole discussion around text, an image and photograph, and the future, so to speak, through this kind of more historical area. And then I'm going to finally try to introduce you to an immersive experience. So if you're users of TikTok, there will be a little QR code towards the end that you can scan and like watch some of the videos that I want to talk about later on. So have your phones at the ready, I guess, or maybe there if you're already scrolling, maybe this is the perfect moment. So yeah, let's start. What is a meme? This is oftentimes the start of these sorts of like talks. That you usually start out with some sort of like reference towards Richard Dawkins, who's this like evolutionary biologist who wanted to describe culture through an evolutionary template, an evolutionary biology perspective. So he came out with this kind of neologism or a new word to describe a bit of unit or a unit of culture that is transferred from person to person, like a mind virus. So this is the real like origin, I guess, of the word meme as we use it today. Of course, there's a huge history behind it, but I'm not going to go into that today. I'm going to be looking at not the origin and not the history particularly of the concept, but how text or caption and images come together in mimetic or meme-like content online. So the concept itself, even though it started with Richard Dawkins, it's got a lot of people have written about it. It's kind of gotten very ambiguous. But for today's talk, for today's like 10 minutes, I want to just simply approach them as template-based image text combinations. Of course, another important thing for memes is that they're circulated. So like for an image to become a meme, someone else needs to see it. So that's the whole like kind of idea of circulation that plays into the form and also the travels of memes online. So if we're to start with the most basic meme, we would probably think of something like this. This is the very kind of skeleton of what is called an image macro, which used to, which was quite, I think, a trendy or popular way of making and sharing memes in the early 2000s. There's a kind of obviously computer science history to the word image macro that I'm not going to get into. However, this is more so related with meme generation methods in the early 2000s, so mostly done through kind of text prompts. Then we move into, obviously, the distracted boyfriend meme, which is one of the, again, most popular images. And if you were to think of a extremely popular, extremely well-circulated meme, it would probably look something like this. However, like Lillian's kind of mentioned before, I know she's also written a book on this, so she knows this much better than me. But there's also the chain text kind of history to meme-like content. So if we're thinking about text and image combinations, we can't just think of like top text, bottom text, impact font, kind of viral moments online. We also have to think about, I think, technologies other than the computer, things maybe that we've kind of forgotten or maybe ironically use. So here we can see some ASCII art, which I'm really fond of, and I try to use often in my emails. Of course, ASCII art also brings itself to one of my most favorite genres of meta content, which is spam or chain emails. Here's an example of, I think, ASCII art that started being shared on social media platforms, through emails, and through more, I think, newer platforms online. Further, so starting with ASCII, we have the chain text on the telephone, on the digital kind of environment. Then we move into memes as spam, whereas text is being used to create some sort of visual experience, a circulation forward kind of ideology. Then we get into, obviously, the meme generators, which is the easiest and the most popular way to create a meme. If you, for instance, Google meme generator, you'll get around, I think, tens of hundreds of pages of basic meme generators, which work on a text prompt and a basic image. So maybe you've made a meme like this yourself. Here we see an example from Futurama, which is another very popular kind of cultural product that made its way into internet culture and embedded itself in ASCII form. This is one of the more interesting kind of moments in internet culture. We get what has been deemed the internet ugly aesthetic style. This you might most likely associate with rage comics, which really kind of mushroomed on a platform or an image board actually called 4chan. 4chan's communication style was fast-paced. It was based on these conversational volleys, and it has a specific kind of interface that makes makes the user quickly draw comics or quickly draw reaction pictures to send in these like threads. So you end up with that kind of environment. You end up with what's been called this kind of internet ugly rage comic style, most characterized by simple lines, amateurish kind of depictions of ugly faces. Of course, I think any sort of talk on photography and memes needs to somehow make its way into stock photography, which is kind of the basis or the foundation of meme culture. As you might recognize, this character, Hide the Pain Herald. I want to, for the last part of this talk, basically take memes from stock photography and follow Harold's journey into becoming a text-based immersive experience. So, like I said, stock photography is one of the foundations of meme culture, and a specific character in it is this person called Harold. He is a Hungarian model that got lots of stock photography photos taken of himself, and because of his kind of facial expression, which people said looked like he was hiding some really depressing feelings behind a smile. People found this to be really, I think, relatable, and his visage, his face, went pretty viral online. So I think he's one of the more interesting characters in meme history to follow. So while doing research for this talk, I was looking for the various kind of stages of Harold's memification online, starting from a person that was seen in stock photography into something else. So I came across images that were getting more and more surreal. Of course, I also came upon the deep fried or saturated sort of form of Harold, and finally I ended up in the character AI Hide the Pain Harold immersive experience. So this is just to I wanted to kind of show you how memes started from, we can say, quite simple text based images into images combined with captions, and today it's been fully immersed, been embedded within the capitalistic kind of platform economy, creating a specific sort of chatbot that is meant to become a friend to you or help you with meme creation and share relatable experiences. With that, I want to end you at a specific point online that I've been really interested in recently. It's this TikTok account called Liminal Destinations. Who it's a creator or I guess a page that shares a lot of immersive experiences that are all based in the POV or imagine yourself as textual template. I think this kind of heralds a sort of immersive new sort of condition in memetic culture, where memes have gone from these quite simple text image combinations into a whole audio-visual experience in which you can fully immerse yourself into through a kind of an algorithmic order. That's it for me. Hopefully you enjoyed this, and let me know if you have any questions in the chat box.
Thank you, Idil. Virtual applause for you as well. Yeah, we've been communicating with memes for a while now. Do you see, you were talking about like a shift in memes in how like it's becoming more immersed, and not only text and image, but also video and sound, and like more like forms of media. Let's say. Do you also see any shifts happening in how we communicate, especially among a younger audience or younger generation, for instance, who's growing up with communicating like this?
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the most interesting developments has been the kind of audio aspect to memes these days, because most people, young people, seem to get their memes from TikTok, which is a inherently like audio-visual experience. I've read interesting kind of reports, some I think some like forum posts, some TikTok videos in which teachers share how they experience the classroom now that TikTok has become a part of their students' lives. So, for instance, one of the things I've learned is that a lot of younger people, young children or high school aged people will they'll all like communicate over usually TikTok, where a meme will become quite viral, maybe in a week or overnight, and they'll come back to the classroom and start to use the kind of audio meme template as like a form of communication, where they'll like basically yell out these sorts of like audio meme templates, and teachers seem to think that it creates like this really bizarre sort of classroom situation in which you have a bunch of people who have developed an in-group language overnight on TikTok, and then you as the teacher are trying to understand what they're communicating, why they're saying this like word over and over again, or making this sound over and over again, and how it's become viral. I mean, it seems, I think, pretty interesting to think about that like audio repetition aspect of the current like mimetic experience.
Interesting. Thank you so much. If you have a question for Idil, or about both presentations, you can still share it in the chat, because we will have a short panel discussion at the end of all talks. Thank you, Idil.
Thank you.
And then Winke will come back to the stream.
Yes, so he kept us waiting for a bit, but thankfully I'm very excited to welcome to the stage Gregory Eddi Jones. Gregory is a post-photographic artist, writer, publisher based in Philadelphia and New York. His work is grounded in methods of appropriation and the reauthorship of existing photographic, literary, and aesthetic traditions. His practice often engages with visual criticism, dark humor, cultural commentary, and building conversant bridges between past and present, cultural, political, and technological conditions. Today, we will take a look at his recent work, 4923, which was actually also featured in the latest Faux magazine issue on AI called Missing Mirror. Welcome to the stage, Gregory. Oh, you have to click unmute. Yes.
Okay. Hi guys. I'm so sorry. I have the time wrong. I thought it was. I thought we were beginning in 10 minutes. I'm so embarrassed for being late. I apologize.
No problem. Luckily, we were able to shift Idil and you around. So actually, the viewers, the participants on the other side of the screen, probably hadn't noticed until now.
Well, I told the beans, but here I am.
We're very happy to have you here. I guess we can just jump into your slides. If you're able to share your screen, we can take a look at your work. Mm-hmm. And Marco, our technician, can hopefully bring it to the stream in a bit. And let's see when it's visible for the viewers.
Okay.
I think it will come soon. I guess you can start.
Okay, great. 4923 is a body of work I completed last year, so this is a page from a 1949 issue of Popular Photography magazine. I collect old photography magazines, and I have the whole year's worth of Popular Photography from this particular year. And as I was getting acclimated into these, in like middle of 2022, just as like these AI generation tools like DALL-E and Midjourney began to be introduced to the public, I was thinking of how I could use those tools in a way that that kind of made sense to me, which isn't just to like use, whatever out of the box products they are, but try to find a way to think about what AI means for the future of photography. And it got me thinking about the past of photography. And so these are just a few of the source pages that I used as the building blocks for what the project became. And I always love all these old vintage camera ads and all the language from, photography days gone by, I guess you could say. And so basically, as I was going through these magazine pages, I would kind of be like reading all the content, looking at the images, just trying to like imagine like what photography was like almost, I don't know how long, 80 years or something now ago is when those magazine, when this particular series of magazines were published. And I would use a lot of the text on the pages as the prompts that I would input into DALL-E to make images. And then I would take those AI images and digitally collage them back over the pages, kind of trying to create like this bridge between what photography used to be and what it's becoming. And I wanted to use the text from the pages specifically because I had some trouble early on figuring out how to inject a kind of meaning making within the prompt process itself. And so by using the existing text, it almost felt like the history of the medium had some role in the authorship of whatever came out of these AI machines. Speaking about text, I was kind of tickled by the fact that if I asked it to spell out a word, it could never get it right. So this image on the right here, I asked it for a picture of a box of Kodak film, and this is the closest it could get. And then this one on the left, I wanted to recreate Paul Strand's very famous photograph of a blind woman on a street and with a sign that says blind hanging over her neck. And this is the closest it could get. And it was backwards for some reason. So, but in this picture on the right specifically, it was really interesting to me how, in some sense, the AI couldn't really acknowledge or understand, the history of photography that came before it, even though it's trained on so many billions of photographs. It makes you realize how sort of dumb the tool is, or maybe kind of how ignorant it might be towards like how it itself fits within this larger continuation of visual technology. So I'm just going to go through a few pairings I've put together of the work just to kind of show you a representation of the series. And a lot of my consideration of like the actual subject matter of these AI pictures, oftentimes they're, again, like based on the content from the magazine itself, but also making reference to photographic technologies. Like this picture on the right was when I asked it to make a picture of a darkroom enlarger, and it created this strange contraption. But I also wanted to include a lot of subject matter that felt sort of recursive, like pictures of things that are imitations of other things, because like these AI quote unquote photographs are imitations of the real thing, right? So like a rocking horse, a crash test dummy. Up here on the left, this was an inflatable pool alligator. So just trying to kind of play these games and exploring just how to interpret these tools and figuring out what their benefits are, what their shortfalls are. And then this is the last one.
I'll unmute myself. Thanks, Gregory, for giving us a quick look into to the work 4923. Before we invite the other speakers back on the stage, I want to ask you one question first. You mentioned your work really is based on the history of the photographic medium, or should I say the photographic technology? And maybe going back a step, you call yourself a post-photographic artist. Could you briefly elaborate on that and how that relates to the role that this history plays in your work? Because it comes back in other series of for you as well.
Yeah, there's a phrase I always come back to, which is that the history of photography is a history of technology, right? It's, whatever images we can make now are a product of these technological developments that have occurred over, whatever time frame you want to put on it. And so that's always been like a big interest of mine, is how the medium of photography, like as we understand it or how we define it, it's always changing, it's always evolving and adapting in relation to what new available technologies there are to, get involved in some form of image making. And AI, like it certainly, like, to me, it felt like the next logical step where, we as humanity have gotten to a point where, like, throughout photography's history, it's been this mission of how to make images faster to make and cheaper to make. And AI seems to be a kind of a culmination of that, where it's like an automatic picture engine now. It's like we don't even need the camera anymore. And this project, I think, was just a way for me to start to try to unpack just the enormous amounts of baggage that come with these new tools. And, I think what we're all trying to still figure out collectively, like what they mean for this idea of photography and how you've understood it.
Thanks. Yeah. I'm going to welcome Idil and Simone back on the stage so that we can continue the conversation. Like you said, Gregory, you see this, the text to image generation sort of as a continuation in this, sort of this history where photography or the photographic medium has always pursued this sort of easier, quicker, more frictionless way of producing. And it made me think also about how, the culmination of this where we are right now is that in today's media landscape, images don't have to be based on this real world reference anymore. They're created from language, like you also did in 4923. And I was wondering, I'm gonna throw the question up for you, but maybe Simone, you can also jump in on this. What would you say are the implications of this? Because obviously from your practice, you really look at how computer systems kind of index the real world, so to say, but then how does that, how do you view that, the implication of images not being based on anything real out there?
God, I feel like there's a 3-hour answer I could respond with. I mean, it's, I guess maybe like the thing I would say is that, like, I don't know. I've heard AI tools like this being described as like a camera for the imagination, which is a nice saying, but I don't know that. I mean, the implications are enormous in terms of like the commercial aspects of photography. What use cases for the camera will be replaced in the next 10 years with these tools? What it means for artists when you have this door that it's unlocked a skill-less form of art making, and what that means in terms of like how we value creative labor and process, or if it's just the result and how that, the results kind of make a way into the cultural consciousness. I also think about the very overabundant presence of images in our lives, how we're just bombarded with content, we're just scrolling, and it's endless, and how these tools will be just adding to that again. And I think that, like, just personally as an artist, like it gives me anxieties about like, what, like how can you make meaning or pursue meaning in a world where, we're always just bombarded with all these different cultural propositions, and, the things that you make just feel like spitting in the ocean. So like on a personal level, I think that's what I've been thinking about lately with this stuff.
Yeah, Simone, do you want to respond to that from your angle?
Sure. Yeah, I mean, I think there's many facets to it. I think my thinking around it is less artistic practice and the consequences it has on that. I think I always lead with the question of, like, in what spaces are we applying these technologies? And what I find in my research often is that a lot of the work surrounding computer vision as it is now, even more specifically domestic space, but this would also go for other applications of computer vision, is that it's in a development phase, and it isn't very clear yet what the end product might be, where it's going to end up. And I think on the one hand, that's an incredibly exciting space, perhaps technologically. But on the other, it also means that there can be neglect rather than intentionality, right? Meaning, for example, in the data set I was describing before, there is a folder with images that are used to texture these 3D models. And one of them is to texture what they call media surfaces. And media surfaces are just like TVs and laptops and like where the projector will project onto. And the images that are used to texture that in virtual space, there's 3 of them, and they all, for whatever reason, are images of Fox News, right-wing US television. And, you can be here now and have like a great sort of, conclusion about political leanings and technology, et cetera. But I do think there's probably more of a negligence, right? It's like one of the images, even the file name is called Facebook, is in the file name. So it's clear that it's like from someone's timeline, right? So like the file itself is telling a story as well, not just the image, but the file name, the metadata, everything surrounding it. So it's more to say that I think a lot of this technology in its development stage, isn't going through any sort of auditing process. There isn't any annotation at the point where it's done. There's efforts around that, around like model annotation, as well as data set annotation, model cards, they're called, so that you simply sort of say, hey, where are you sourcing your information from? So that at the end of the day, you perhaps have a little bit more of a context or an idea of, what the technology sort of ended up becoming, and kind of contract that back, rather than artistic practices or other kind of practices being part of that sort of journey, right? And so I think for me, it's more a question of like, hey, if we're developing this stuff, we don't quite know yet why and what sort of spaces we're going to apply them in. That I think is a little bit problematic, specifically because we see that they tend to be applied on a large scale. And with that, I mean sort of a global market, right? At the end of the day, you have to generate your revenue back. So you create something that can be marketed in so many different places. So the domestic space is an interesting way to sort of break that down and say, hey, that's just simply not possible because people live differently. But I mean, the same applies to face recognition, right? Where you right away see where it's been pointed out by many, many researchers that skin color is a big problem in terms of being recognized. Like one of the early Google Plus, right, when was this, like early 2010s, where people with darker skin tones were identified as gorilla, which was incredibly shocking. But at the same time, it was really just a symptom of these technologies that are built in a way where no one really gave it any deeper thought, is rolled out on a very large scale. And then it's kind of like, oh, well, probably we should have looked at this a little bit closer. So I think those are more a little bit the places that I'm interested in, rather than the effect it has on artistic practices. So more in some way being able to ask questions about it and make space for that, rather than be worried about its efficiency.
Yeah, and I'm now wondering, when you mentioned that, how those biases that are ingrained in these systems, and that you also elaborated on in your presentation, sort of looking forward, what are ways to solve this, or how can we contribute, or do you have any ideas of how we, that maybe in the past we weren't aware of these things slipping in, and yeah, can we still somewhat control this?
Yeah, I mean, again, complicated question, right? I mean, Joseph Weizenbaum, computer scientist, has a beautiful thing on this, right? About what sort of questions are you asking technology? And probably the ones that you're asking it are social and cultural problems, not so much technical problems, so they shouldn't be solved with technology. I think oftentimes, again, this isn't a blanket statement, but I think oftentimes the moments where we do see the biggest harm in bias by these automated systems, it is due to replacing some sort of human action that, again, has a different kind of symptom, right? So like if in a hiring process, you're suddenly applying sort of emotion recognition to see if a person is fit for the job, that's down to other questions, right? Like, why do you even need to have a technology do that job? Why isn't there a person in a room speaking to another human being? I don't think it's so simple to answer that question, right? There's like tons of reasons why technology is used in these settings. But so I think it's less about making the technology better and perhaps backtracking a little bit and wondering why we're using it in the first place. And so I'm not like an AI denier. I mean, at the end of the day, I'm also doing my work because I'm very nerdy about this stuff and I love using it. But for example, in my last movie of the series, I'm using sort of AI agents in Unity, in the game engine software, to train a chair to walk. And so I'm much more interested in these sort of absurdities and these sort of, other ways of working with these technologies rather than trying to reproduce reality or trying to replace perhaps a human being in the chain. Try to seek out other ways of be it making or decision process, et cetera, and have a different kind of relationship with it.
Thanks. Thanks for elaborating on that. Maybe turning to Idil for a moment. We had a great question about sort of you explained obviously about the relationship between text and image in mimetic culture, where it's very visible, a visible sort of link. But then now that texts are creating images by text prompting, the text becomes sort of invisible. What is your take on AI generated memes, where technically the text kind of disappears to this more invisible layer?
I think AI generated memes are the new boomer memes. I think they're really unfunny. But and if you've looked at, I think to like understand memes, you need to look at if we're looking like at a genre of memes, in this case AI memes. If we look at the people who are most excited about AI memes and the ones that who share it a lot, are reply guys of Elon Musk, and Elon Musk is constantly sharing AI generated memes. Like I feel I associated with this sort of like accelerationist logic that sees like that sort of I think AI memes have like some sort of ideology hidden behind them. Their memes are so easy to make. Why would you make an AI make memes? Like the idea itself is so ridiculous, because it's like, what is easier than a meme? There's like there's a meme generator for you to use, and the ones that AI makes aren't, the texts are always illegible, they're not funny if they are legible, or they don't make any sense, and then the images that are created have no reason to be that like kind of extravagant. Memes, like I said, they're these like bits of mundane. They can often be really ugly, quickly drawn together, amateurish in its look. It's kind of already something we assume and accept about them. So why do we have to use like precious resources to make ugly and unfunny memes? I don't really know. I think they're useless. But the other thing is, I think more people should make like analog memes. Just go on like memegenerator.com. There's no reason for AI memes. Does it like represent something? Yeah, it represents some sort of like almost like techno-liberalist perspective of just experimentation with no intention. So I'm a doomer when it comes to AI.
You would also think that by now, with the abundance of memes online, that AI systems should have technically become better at recreating them. But
I mean, I recently read this. I read this paper, this like interview or article about on popularmechanics.com or something like that. But it was about this person who wrote a PhD thesis about how AI can't understand memes, and that means that they're a great way to maybe like they'll be great to as like placeholders for like CAPTCHA. So you'll be able to like decipher a meme that AI can't. But I feel like that'll all like we should just like maybe leave memes outside of AI. I feel like that's like the only kind of like salvation when it comes to internet culture at this point. But yeah.
Speaking, about this sort of maybe lack of creativity in AI when it comes to making memes, there was a question from the audience a little bit related to that for Gregory, which is you're using a lot of AI in your work, obviously, and this audience member was wondering, do you feel like you can somewhat predict the image you will receive from a prompt now that you've used it more and more? Or are you still very surprised by the outcome? And how did that how did that occur in your recent projects? You need to unmute.
Sorry. When I was making that work, it was probably, I was just using DALL-E. It was an early version. It's probably a year and a half ago. And I really haven't used much of these tools since, just because I guess like I haven't wanted to. So I don't know to the extent that they've evolved. I'm sure they have quite a bit since I used them, but I certainly got a lot of surprises when I was doing prompting. And I mean, usually like when I would put in like, the thing, like make me a picture of this and this with, this kind of quality, usually it would get to be like, I don't know, 70% of what I wanted, which is still like really impressive, but there definitely were like a lot of surprises. I mean, I did a lot of prompting, so there are bound to be unexpected results.
Yeah, I bet. Looking at the time, we need to wrap up. Maybe I'm just really curious from you, Gregory, as you also participated in a coincidentally the same name as our event series. Your work is now in an exhibition called Photography Is in New York, if I'm correct.
Yes.
How would you, as a post-photographic artist, finish the sentence? Photography is.
Oh God!
Or is that too big of a question?
No, it's okay. I mean, I think it's anything. I would say anything. Yeah.
Anything. That's actually a nice reply. I'm very curious to Simone's and Idil's answers as well, but I think I'm gonna use that bridge to close off, and we'll meet them in the Miro, because we've come to the end, almost the end of our third Photography Is ... event. I want to thank everyone for joining. Our wonderful speakers, of course, Simone, Gregory, and Idil, for your valuable insights. Everyone listening can give them a virtual applause in the live stream. We also want to thank Cultuurloket Digital for making this event series possible, and of course, everyone who's joining in online. Visit foam.org/explore to stay up to date of all the things happening over there. And for our next and also final event, we'll finish the sentence Photography Is with the word surreal. This event will take place on Wednesday evening, 11th of December. It will be a slightly different setup where we will host a number of 5 speakers. And we're concluding this series by sharing all the weirdness and surreal shapes of photography related to the internet. We're excited to already announce Linda Dunya Rabijs, Jason Kubler, Sylvia Daldosso, and Camo as our speakers. More info you find on our event page. Stay tuned for the last speaker to be confirmed there. We can't hear you, Lillian.
Yes, here I am. Before we leave the stream here, we invite you to join us on Miro board and share your answer to the Photography Is sentence. Simone and Idil can also do it there. On the board, you also find some interesting articles and research we used to prepare this event. Feel free to add your own thoughts and key takeaways from today's discussion. We'd love to hear from you. So hop on over while we're closing off this stream, and let's continue the conversation there. Margarita is sharing the link to the Miro in the chat now. That's it for now. Have a nice evening and hope to see you in December.
Bye.